Well, a very warm welcome this morning to everyone here on this webinar, Dementia Whole Life Approach Get Outdoors Learning event. My name's Alan Crockett and I'm the Director of Evidence and Influencing with the Life Changes Trust for the Dementia Programme, and I'm delighted to chair this event this morning. This is the Trust's first online learning event for 2021, so it's a real delight to be here once again and to get started with our events again for this year. I hope you're all sitting comfortably. Before we get started, I just want to go over some of the key points that we sent in your joining notes. This will help us to make this the best experience for you today. So, and I think many of you may have already done this, but can I just check firstly that you make sure that you are on gallery view? This means that you can see more than just the person who's speaking, so more than just me. You can find this option in the top right-hand corner of the main screen. Secondly, could everyone have their cameras and microphones turned off? And lastly, we're going to ask you to hide other non-video participants. I'll say that again. We're going to ask you to hide other non-video participants. This will give you a better experience of our speakers that are going to come on later this morning. You do this by right-clicking on your own little black box or anyone whose camera is turned off, and select the option for hide non-video participants. I'll say that again. So you right click on your own little black box or anyone else's whose camera is turned off, and then you select hide non-video participants. Thanks. And remember, you can use the chat function at any time for any questions or comments that you may have throughout the morning. And also just to let you know that we will be recording the webinar, the main plenary sessions, but we will not be recording in the breakout rooms. Okay, so thanks. That's the technicalities, or the technical elements over with now. So now on to today's programme. In April 2018, the Life Changes Trust funded 6 Get Outdoors projects for up to 2 years, with the purpose of supporting projects and activities that encourage and support people living with dementia and their unpaid carers to spend more time outside. The 6 projects were Sporting Memories, Instinctively Wild, the Froglife Trust, the Ecology Centre in Kinghorn, the Dumfries and Galloway project, and Evanton Wood Community Company near Dingwall. This morning, we'll see some short films featuring a few of those projects, as well as an animation of some of the case studies. We'll be hearing some of the key findings from the evaluation of our Get Outdoors funding, courtesy of Louise Wilson from Outside the Box, who carried out the evaluation. We'll also take a look at the learning from these projects and what this learning and evidence means in a policy context. In other words, how do we use this learning, and by we I mean all of us, to influence change? And then I'm delighted to say that Andrina Coburn from the Life Changes Trust will talk about some top tips for delivering outdoor activities for people living with dementia. So a really busy morning, lots to get through, and don't forget you will have the chance to discuss learning and ask any questions in our breakout rooms later this morning. Also, please feel free, again, as I said, to use the chat function for any questions you may have. So on to the first part of our programme. We're going to learn a bit more now about one of our Get Outdoors funded projects, Evanton Wood Community Company. They deliver a programme of outdoor activities for people living with dementia and unpaid carers in areas surrounding the wood. While outdoor activities are currently curtailed due to COVID, members are still connecting online, and more outdoor activities are already being planned for when they become possible again. During the height of their activities, they made a short film about the project and the impact on participants. So let's go down to the woods today.
So this site itself is only 120 acres. So as a woodland, it's quite small.
Yeah.
But what it has got, and what's perfect in this wood, is it's really diverse. And what I mean by that is, look at all the different trees that we got here, okay?
Very much.
Bunch them up then.
Got to have a look here.
Okay.
Look, that's going over.
That's it, and then keep going, then there's another one.
Going under.
That's it, Ian, you got it.
But I thought to start with it would be quite nice to just move together a little bit, so we'll do a bit of a physical warm up. So we'll go for a jog. No, I'm just seeing if you're paying attention. Yeah. Right?
And you stopped and they want a piece.
That'll be your ending piece. Or if you're feeling feisty, you can speed it up.
This is part of a recycling project. We're using found wood or upcycled wood for the shapes of the animals. They're all animals that you'd find in the forest here. And it's a bit like a creative jigsaw. Do you know, it's going to take ages to explain that to someone, how to do that, and you've just done it. So well done.
Hi, my name is Carrie Marshall. I'm a Director of Creativity and Care, and we were invited to work here with Evanton Community Woods on the dementia project, which is all about going out, being outside. We know that the benefits of being outside are immense for people living with dementia, to get oxygen into the brain, but also for the social side of things. And people generally feel better when they're outside in nature, and that's been shown quite a lot. So some of the people that we work with, we know, feel more alive when they're in the woodlands. So it's been a really lovely experience.
Being outside here,
I like being outside in the fresh air. The woods, the river, and birds, and deer, foxes, anything, always wild. That's me, wildlife, always me, always. All my life, all my...
Well, I cut the thing made out the centre with a knife, I think it was I had, and filled it with that. But I didn't know, I can't remember anything more. I guess now I've got Alzheimer's and I can't remember things.
But the seal, of course, dived straight down into the water with a knife still in his back. And the fisherman was not sure whether he was more cross about losing his knife. I brought oil pastels. You put in a little bit of a different colour. And look at its head. And its beak.
It's excellent. Very good. Thumbs up. Thumbs up for the two people.
Many thanks to Evanton Wood once again. I remember first seeing that film at our first regional event up in the Highlands in November 2018, and it never gets old to really see the joy in people's faces and being outdoors and socialising together, and then the arts and crafts and the woodwork and things. It's really good to see that. It's a really positive image, and it will stay with, I'm sure, a lot of us throughout this morning's webinar. And it's also be remiss of me not to say that Evanton Community Wood in 2019 was designated as the first dementia-friendly community wood by Paths for All. So many congratulations to the team up there and all of those people in the community that take part. So it's now time to move on to discussion around evaluation. So with all of our funded projects, once we have issued funding, we also commission an evaluation. And our Get Outdoors funding was no exception. Outside the Box was commissioned to carry out this work, and the report looks at detail of the 6 different projects, what kind of activities they undertook and the impact these activities had and being outdoors had on people living with dementia and unpaid carers. The evaluation also looks at learning from the Get Outdoors funding itself. So to tell us a bit more, I'm joined by Louise Wilson from Outside the Box. So over to you, Louise.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Louise Wilson from Outside the Box. Outside the Box works across Scotland with people and communities who want to change things or set up new activities. And part of our work is with older people in rural communities, focusing on older people having a voice and contributing in ways that work for them, creating better places for people to grow old. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the insights we've gained from the Get Outdoors programme, focusing on the benefits of being outside for people living with dementia and for their unpaid carers. So first of all, I'm going to talk a bit about the Get Outdoors programme and the projects involved. So there were 6 projects across Scotland, from Dumfries in the south and to Evanton Wood in the north that we've just seen. I'm just going to talk a little bit about all of the projects because they're all really different. Dumfries and Galloway, they focused on the rural community, developing memory boxes and connections, and also visits and trips to local farms and meetups with local farmers. Froglife is a national wildlife charity with a focus on reptiles and amphibians and protecting and developing their habitats. They worked in Glasgow with people in care homes and also with specialist support organisations like Alzheimer's Scotland. They visited community gardens and allotments, and they also developed gardens in care homes, creating ponds and wildlife areas. The third one was Sporting Memories. So it's a charity that supports older people to make connections through sport. They worked with Wishaw Bowling Club and ran a really successful bowling project for people living independently and also people from local care homes. And we've got a few pictures of the bowling in action that I'll share with you later. The fourth one is Instinctively Wild, based in the Borders, and delivering projects around outdoor learning for all ages. They use the grounds of a large house in Selkirk, offering a range of activities, indoors and outdoors, depending on the weather, grabbing moments to be outside. The Ecology Centre at Kinghorn Loch, apologies if I'm ruined that with my pronunciation, but based over in Fife, are a community-based environmental charity, and we've got a film from them coming up. And Evanton Wood in the far north, we've just seen the fabulous film of all their activities. The thing that struck us was around the cooking and the eating was so important, but also the music and the friendships that were made there. And I think you could see that on the film. So that's a quick run through of the 6 projects. But the thing was, how did we go about the evaluation of these projects? So first of all, we had an evaluation team. So it was me, but also other colleagues from Outside the Box, Ruth Noble and Kate Robertson, who are also here today, and we might see them later. So we took a different approach to the evaluation, and we had 2 reasons for this. Firstly, we were working with projects and activities that were outside. And secondly, because the people participating were living with dementia and were also busy doing activities and being outside and walking. And we didn't want to get in the way, and we didn't want to take people away from the activities or bring them inside if we didn't have to, because the whole purpose was about being outside. So the approach we took was to visit projects. We took part in the activities, if that was okay. We observed and we watched what was going on, and we had conversations, lots of conversations with people. And these were really just chats, asking people about what was going on, how they felt, what they liked, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, and the differences that being part of the group and being outside made to them. We then gathered all these thoughts and ideas and conversations into magic moments. And these were around significant changes and impacts in people's lives. The moments may be small, but they're significant for the individual, for the family member, for the volunteer, or for the worker. And then we use the magic moments to assess the overall impact of people spending time outside. So during the evaluation process, it was clear that there were many, many benefits to getting outside and spending time outdoors. First of all, we'd got improved confidence and well-being was really, really striking. And also improved physical abilities. But I think if you look at the picture, we can see those things in the picture. But if we look at the men, both of them are living with dementia. But one is sharing his knowledge, the gentleman in the cream Aran cardigan is sharing his knowledge and skill of bowling. And the other one, it was his first time there and he was learning. And I think you can see from the picture, they were enjoying it and having fun. And certainly the volunteers and helpers behind were having fun as well. They're moving more and they're being active, which was really crucial. So there are clearly many positive impacts. And one of the main benefits we found for participants was improved physical ability and well-being. So there were lots of different activities going on. I think I've mentioned some of them, but the walking, bowling, using equipment to build and refurbish things. And those activities gave people opportunities to do other things. So in particular, make decisions and take choices. And as a starting point, it was things like, what did they want to do? Who did they want to walk with and talk with? Where did they want to go? What did they need to wear? Did they want to do it because the weather wasn't so good? And did they want to stay inside? So lots of decisions there. They were also an opportunity to be part of a group. And I think we're all social animals to some degree. And it's good to have friends and it's good to be part of something. And I think it's something we've all missed as we confine to our homes and we now only see people virtually. But this, back when we could go out, was a real opportunity for people to be part of a group. And I think you saw that very clearly in the Evanton Wood film. And I think you'll probably see it in the Ecology Centre film as well. And the final point here is linked to decision making is that people were able to assess risks for themselves about things. So as I've said, the weather, did they really want to go outside? Or if they were going to go outside, were they going to be happy getting wet and cold and then warming up and getting dry and warm later? Or was it around climbing up and down banks, deciding which bowls they wanted to do? Or was it around showing people how to do things? So people were able to make those choices. And during the evaluation, we heard over and over again from participants about the positive impact of being outside. And what I've got here are some quotes. So the first one is from Instinctively Wild at the top left. And the idea here is that you can see more if you're outside, and that sometimes it's unexpected and how good that is. And that's a theme that re-emerges quite often. The second one is from Froglife, and workers saying that they can see the improvements in balance and coordination in people because they've been outside on the farm visits and just walking around, and the difference that has made. And then the third one from Froglife, people saying they're walking more in their lives because they've been walking with Froglife. That's given them the confidence, and they've taken that into other aspects of their life. We also had some really positive feedback from sporting memories. So this one is bowling in action. This man hadn't played for a very long time. It was something that he gave up as his dementia advanced. But what was clear to us and to him and everybody else was that the memory and the expertise was still there. In his everyday life, he used a walking frame to help him get about and keep his balance. But when he was on the bowling green, much to his carer's worry, he forgot his walking frame and just walked from one end of the bowling green to the other. He was able to make that decision. He took that risk and he thoroughly enjoyed it. as you can see from the concentration there. So there were lots of physical benefits from being outside, but there were other broader benefits too. Increased friendship and social connections, which I'll talk a bit more in a moment, but also improved memories and cognitive well-being. It was the thing I've said before about being outside. It's a dynamic environment. You've got changing seasons, we've got changing weather, we've got unexpected things. And that prompts conversations and memories and just feeling good because you're experiencing something different. The groups all met at set times and regularly, and this created a purpose and structure in people's lives that they built upon, and they also built round. And as we've heard from the Froglife quote, people said they went out more for a walk and they scheduled this in. So they were beginning to create a structure, but also getting more exercise as well. And then the final point here about reducing stigma around living with dementia. And the projects appear to do this in two ways. Firstly, the projects and the activities were really informal, and I think you could see that in the film. Everyone working together, helping out, getting things sorted and getting things ready. And as people who were new to the group, who were visitors, it wasn't until you had quite lengthy conversations with people, you didn't know what role they had within the group. Were they a volunteer, a worker, a carer, or a person living with dementia? It wasn't obvious. And that informal setting helped everybody learn more about dementia and reduce the stigma. And in particular, we found workers who were working on the project or were part of teams that referred people to said that they really learned an awful lot because of that setting. And then the second way about reducing stigma was the way the projects and the groups were active in the community. So other people saw what was going on, and they also saw that everybody was having fun and really enjoying themselves. And that, again, just helped. People wanted to know what was going on and talked about it and wanted to know what was happening. And that, again, helped reduce stigma around living with dementia. We found that increased friendships and social connections were really important to people. Everyone talked about the friends and the connections they made. And in the picture, I think you can see this is a rainy day pool game being played. We've got informal groups chatting. And from the quote, this is from an unpaid carer, a family member. The idea of independence and having your own friends, which I think is important to all of us. And also about conversations being important and having new conversations. So there were lots of benefits for people with a diagnosis of dementia, but there were also some positive impacts for carers who attended the sessions. And I think the good thing here, or the extra bit here, was that carers got the same benefits as people living with dementia, but they also got their own set of additional benefits as well. So I've talked a few times about conversation and memories, but carers in particular, said that they got good conversations and they got new people to talk to. And this helped with their own memories, about recalling old memories, but getting new memories from participating in the activities. Friendships, they have got a whole range of friendships with other carers, but with the volunteers, with the community members and with the projects. And they also got informal peer support, and this worked on two levels. Firstly, emotional support, being good friends, but also living through the same things, being able to share some of those frustrations and difficulties, but also some of the joys as well. And also the practical support about how and where to get things or who to ask for help. And because it was informal, people said it was easier to get help, and it didn't make it into a big thing. They could just gently ask in the course of the conversation. And that made it easier and less stressful to find out things that they needed to, or just say, oh, this is happening. Is that happening for you as well? So to be able to share that. And that was really important to carers. And then finally, space and time for carers was really important. And this was either by not participating in the get outdoors activities, so carers could stay at home, go out, do their own thing, they got space and time. But those that did come along got the benefits of participating in the activities, being outside, getting all the movement and confidence from being physically active. But they also got the benefit of participating in their own right, and being a partner or a child or a sibling, a family member, participating in the project and not being a carer. And people said that was really important to them. So carers really enjoyed, really value being part of these projects. And I've got some quotes here. So the first two, kind of left to right across the top, from the Ecology Centre for Evanton Wood, talking very much about it's the best day of the week, which is just fabulous. It's look forward to, anticipation and structure in the week, and people are really interesting. And I was thinking, if you're organising an activity, whether it's for work or a social one, or just going to one, it doesn't get much better than that. And that's a really good criteria on to judge how we spend our time and who we spend our time with. And then the final comment here from the Ecology Centre, taking it to a new level around friendships and informal support, that it's a safe place to offload a little, share experiences, frustrations and achievements, and it makes a difference. Thought, yes, that again, a really good way to judge the success of your friendships and also your activities. So that's all for me for now. But if you want to get in touch, my email is here. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll now hand back to Arlene.
Many thanks, Louise, for presenting the key findings today from the evaluation. Also to Ruth and Kate, who are part of the evaluation team at Outside the Box as well. I think it's safe to say on behalf of the Trust that, you know, how much we appreciate the time that was taken with this evaluation and the real high quality of the output that we've received on behalf of the projects. And I think just taking the unique approach in terms of immersing yourselves within the projects and the activities that were going on, and it really has allowed you to draw and add real value to the learning and the findings that have been taken from that. So it's really good to be able to see that and to hear from you directly about the impact that has had. We'll also be talking a wee bit more later on in terms of next steps around some of the additional learning that's came from that report. There are summaries from each project that Outside the Box have kindly done as part of the final report. And we've also at the Trust drawn out the magic moments that Louise has talked about, and also some of the hints and tips which Andrina is going to talk about a wee bit later on in the webinar. So many thanks to everybody Outside the Box. It's been a real pleasure to work alongside you with this evaluation, and I'm sure the projects would be saying the same thing, so thank you. So now on to the next part of our webinar. We also wanted to share some of those personal stories which Louise has talked about around some of the quotes and some of the impact. And we wanted to do that in a different way. And again, we went to Outside the Box to discuss how that would be done, because we wanted to really look at the experiences from people with dementia and also their unpaid carers while taking part in these projects. And Outside the Box have kindly taken some of these stories and turned them into an animation. So we hope you enjoy it. So over to Outside the Box and the animation that they've produced. Thank you. Many thanks to Outside the Box for developing that animation. Once again, a real quality piece of work that really amplifies the impacts of the Get Outdoors projects for people with dementia and unpaid carers, and adds real value to the evaluation report presented at today's webinar. And so now it's time to hear a little bit from me. I want to take a few minutes, if I may, to highlight the policy context that this learning aligns with, as it's really important in how we at the Trust influence and how you and other stakeholders shape the way in which you take the learning forward, also to make that change impact felt. So during this time of COVID-19, we are far more aware of the restrictions to our liberties and the justification of those restrictions to safeguard public health. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities recognises that these liberties are often restricted or unsupported, especially for people living with dementia. There are 3 articles that I want to highlight that are pertinent to today's learning and the webinar that you're sharing with us today. And they're particularly relevant to our Get Outdoors theme. I'm going to quickly just talk about them, so I'll highlight them first of all. So Article 5 is about equality and non-discrimination. Article 8 focuses on awareness raising. Article 30 on participation in cultural life, recreation, leisure and sport. So let's look at Article 5, equality and discrimination. This article says that everyone is equal before and under the law. Everyone is entitled to the equal protection and benefit of the law without discrimination. Sometimes, in order to be equal, however, adjustments have to be made to help a person take part. These are called reasonable adjustments, and if we are serious about getting people with dementia outdoors, as the report has so brilliantly described, then we need to look at what these adjustments should be. All of the projects funded through Get Outdoors had to consider these adjustments, whether they be levelling of pathways, for example, better signage, or more places to rest when out walking. If we move on to Article 8, which talks about raising awareness about disabilities, it says, and I quote, countries must raise awareness of the rights, capabilities and contributions of people with disabilities. Countries must challenge stereotypes and prejudices relating to people with people with disabilities through campaigning, education, media and awareness raising programmes. Although this is directed as nation states who have signed the convention, it is our moral duty to raise awareness where we can about dementia and the outdoors. This is what these projects have done and will continue to do. And finally, moving on to Article 30, participation in cultural life, recreation, leisure and sport. Sadly, COVID has emphasised very clearly to each one of us the importance of these aspects of life. People are crying out for the opening of arts and sports venues, and drawing a strong correlation between the lack of these things and poor mental health. We must remember these thoughts and feelings as we emerge from COVID and ensure that we work extra hard to uphold the right of people with dementia to participate in activities that take them outdoors. The mental health of people with dementia matters just as much as the mental health of anyone. And so moving on to Scotland's policy drivers, what do they look like and how does the learning from Get Outdoors have any relevance or any impact? So there's 4 key areas that we would say needs to be drawn attention to in relation to the learning from today's event. The National Performance Framework Key Outcomes, the Health and Social Care Standards, the National Dementia Strategy, and the Dementia Recovery and Transition Plan, which was newly launched. So let's look at Scotland's national outcomes, which say that all citizens should be able to value, enjoy, protect and enhance their environment. People with dementia have an equal right to enjoy their outdoors environment as far as they can. In order to do this, they may need the support and encouragement of projects such as those that you've heard of today. It would also be true to say that Scotland's national dementia strategies don't give much consideration to the outdoors, which is disappointing given that we market our country as a land of mountains, lochs and wide outdoor space. We hope that the evidence from this learning event will demonstrate the importance of getting outdoors for people with dementia and their families and their friends, and the impact it has on their well-being, and also that people can access the outdoors with the right support despite the challenges that they may face. It'd be really good to see a reference to the importance of the outdoors in the next dementia strategy. And moving on more recently to the launch of Dementia and COVID-19, the Action Plan, which is more commonly known as the Dementia Recovery and Transition Plan. Again, this makes no specific mention to the outdoors. However, in Commitment 11, it says, working with local health and social care partnerships and the third sector, community groups and businesses, we will support and enhance local dementia-enabled communities and reduce social isolation and loneliness as part of our shared action to strengthen and recover resilience in our communities. And again, today's event will provide much needed evidence to ensure access to the outdoors is recognised as part of this shared action. There are other commitments, including those who reference rehabilitation, that will also connect well with the evidence being shared today. And finally, Scotland's health and social care standards. They make reference to the outdoors in numerous statements. For instance, in Standard 1.25, it says, I can choose to have an active life and participate in a range of recreational, social, creative, physical and learning activities every day, both indoors and outdoors. It is our experience that many care providers, whilst doing a superb job of assisting people to be outdoors informally and through planned activities, there is many more that can be done. Sometimes, though, we hear about care settings where people with dementia rarely feel the wind, the sun or the rain, even though they would be capable of being outside. Standard 1.12 goes on to say, I am fully involved in assessing my emotional, psychological, social and physical needs at an early stage, regularly and when my needs change. Based on the evidence of the report we are considering today and a wider range of evaluation evidence from the Life Changes Trust funded work, we would argue that any assessment should include a specific section on support to be outside on a regular basis and an exploration with the person on what they would like to do outdoors. We know that some care settings do this and do it well, but we know that many don't yet. And finally, Standard 2.22 states, I can maintain and develop my interests, activities and what matters to me in my daily life. One of the key findings of this report is that people engage with new interests as well as maintaining previous interests in those that they've done before. People with dementia have as much right to develop and thrive as any one of us. A small change that increases social contacts or brings a person closer to nature, for example, or allows them to share a skill can greatly increase a sense of well-being. This benefits the person with dementia, but can also benefit those around them, as mentioned, family and friends. And so now moving on to how the Life Changes Trust uses its evidence to influence and make change happen, both locally and nationally. There are a number of ways in which the Life Changes Trust has already shared learning in relation to the evidence here today and in how it will continue to do so going forward. Early last year, we decided that it was important to shine more of a light on the work taking place in communities in response to COVID-19. And so we began to produce regular flash reports to highlight the work of communities in keeping people safe and connected. In July 2020, the flash report highlighted the work of Evanton Wood and how it had adapted its support in light of restrictions. Not long after, we hosted a number of online sessions with projects to listen more about their experiences of COVID-19. From this, the COVID-19 Learning Report was developed and has been used several times as a means to influence change at a national and at a local level. One project is mentioned in the report called Joy to the Moment. They take the outdoors indoors, with anyone wanting to get involved invited to record themselves doing something creative outdoors, giving the film specifically to share with people who stay indoors, shielding in their own homes or in their rooms in care homes. This is a much needed support for people and very much has helped people feel connected to communities and what's happening there. The films are available on YouTube and we can certainly give you details about them. The Get Outdoors evaluation and the accompanying summaries from each project is what we are highlighting today. The report is one way to share evidence of impact, and as you can see already, we have worked with projects and outside the box to look at other ways to share learning with the use of animations and also the film you have seen and the films you're about to see. All of this sits on our website and is openly accessible to anyone who wants to use it. And finally, in early November, we developed a vision to a whole life approach to social care in Scotland. The report draws on our evidence base, including what we have heard today, and focuses on what we see as the key areas for improvement in adult social care in Scotland. We hope to amplify the views and voices of thousands of people living with dementia and unpaid carers, many of whom have responded to this review in their own right. The final review of the independent review of adult social care is expected in the next few weeks, and all of these reports can be found on the Life Changes Trust website, in our publications page, and also in our dementia programme page as well. And last, but by no means least, in June 2020, we published Dementia, a Whole Life Approach, a resource for creating better lives. This is a 500-page box set of valuable learning and information for people with dementia, unpaid carers of people with dementia, and anyone working in the area of dementia. This box set outlines the work funded by the Trust and the learning drawn from it, as well as that from other organisations in the field of dementia. This is currently on our website and is now being reviewed to include updated information from projects, including today's event and the reports from outside the box. We do anticipate and will be printing hard copies of this resource, so keep an eye out for our e-bulletin for further details on this. As well as it being hosted on our website, we are now developing an e-bulletin to complement the updates that I've mentioned, and will publish the e-bulletin regularly to draw attention to the changes in the current resource and any additions it may need. This is already proving to be an essential resource in the work taking place to influence local and national dementia policy and practice, as well as providing much needed information to people and communities who seek it. And finally, that's enough from me, I think, and it's now time to see more of the learning in action, and so I'm delighted to introduce our next film. So over to you at the Ecology Centre. Thank you.
The Ecology Centre is a charity that's been around 20 years now. We were established in 1998. We're an environmental charity and we offer a range of education, volunteering and training opportunities. We started our tool shed at the Ecology Centre in 2011 in response to more and more tools being donated to us and us realising that they could be refurbished and put back into use in the community. We started our dementia-friendly sessions a couple of years ago when we realised that some of our shedders were living with this condition but were still able to provide us with their skills and experience. We create toolkits that are either passed on to community groups focused in Fife, some of whom come here and work at the Ecology Centre. We also work with international partners. The toolkits that we assemble here are sent out to other countries such as Ghana, Malawi and Greece to benefit from high quality tools put back into great condition.
They'll be like new for like that, as you can see the difference. And they'll last another 10, 12 years maybe, rather than getting thrown in the skip.
It's the community, it's the banter. It's not just about a care scenario where someone's looked after. We give a worthwhile activity, not just killing time. We also have one of our gentlemen that has been coming now for a year and a half. He's just had his latest renewal with his consultant, and they've shown that there's no degradation in his health. It'd be nice to think it's something to do with us. Mm-hmm. We can't prove that, but he's now more confident, he's socially active.
Yeah, we laugh about it. We laugh about memory loss. We don't take anything serious.
This is my apprentice. She couldn't do nothing when she come here.
You've taught me a lot. You have.
For Christmas she's getting a tool bag with tools in it.
That's perfect, David.
And she's going out jogging.
Job a job.
Well, that's it.
We call it We Laugh in the Face of Dementia. As simple as that.
Right.
The impact of the shed on the people who come along and volunteer their time with us is amazing to see and incredibly powerful for us as staff and volunteers who support them. We also get a lot of positive feedback from their carers and their family members who bring them along. Often it's an opportunity for them to draw breath and just have a piece of time to themselves where they can get on with other tasks or just have a coffee and a blether with us here.
I think already just being here provides them something interesting to talk about. Things are a bit more positive, sees a future, which is the hardest thing with Alzheimer's, for them to see a future.
With the overwhelming success of our dementia-friendly toolshed sessions, we're now looking to expand our offering across the Ecology Centre of dementia-friendly occupations that people might be able to volunteer at. We've got a beautiful site here with lots of land that needs working. We have a community garden, kitchen and a multi-purpose space that we can put forward for a range of different activities. We'd encourage anybody who's had an early diagnosis of dementia to come along to the Ecology Centre to see what opportunities we might be able to offer you in terms of volunteering, in terms of meeting the family that we have here and getting involved with the range of activities that we can offer.
The people that I meet here, that's me main reason for coming. I meet such lovely people and we all get on so well together and get a chance to do a bit of woodwork and keep my hand in. That's it in a nutshell, really.
Well, many thanks to the Ecology Centre once again. A really fun and enjoyable piece of film to watch, especially after my presentation of the policy context. So it was probably a bit of light relief for a lot of you there. So many thanks to the Ecology Centre. It's just to see the fun in people's faces, how mischievous people can be as well, and the real, friendship and camaraderie there amongst folks that attend the activities at the Ecology Centre. So many thanks again. Now, we'll be having our breakout sessions soon after our break, but not before we hear from Andrina Coburn. So we'll just need to wait a wee bit longer for them. But please feel free ahead of the breakout sessions to put any comments or questions in the chat, and the staff at the Life Changes Trust will be keeping an eye on that, and I'll maybe mention a bit more about what's coming through in terms of commentary later on this morning in the webinar. So it's now time for me to hand over to one of my colleagues. I'm now going to hand over to Andrina Coburn. Andrina will be talking us through some of those top tips, so some of the information that Louise initially shared, so get into that in a bit more detail, for delivering outdoor activities for people living with dementia, including planning for contingencies, involving participants in decision making and making sure everyone is properly dressed and equipped, as well as that there is social time built into activities. So I'm now going to hand over to Andrina to tell you more about this. Over to you, Andrina.
Good morning, and thank you, Arlene. It's lovely to be here this morning to talk about some of the very practical learning that's come out of the evaluation of the Get Outdoors projects. This learning will be really useful for individuals and organisations who are maybe thinking about delivering some type of outdoor activity for people living with dementia and unpaid carers. And everything that I'm going to talk about this morning can be found in section 7 of the evaluation report, which will be available on our website shortly. So now I'm going to share my screen with you. So I'm going to start with some tips for practitioners who want to use outdoor activities in their work with people living with dementia. And this could include staff working in care homes, staff working for support organisations for older people and people with dementia, or health and wellbeing staff working for health and social care partnerships. Building up staff confidence in delivering outdoor activities is really important, and it's helpful to develop and guide staff through risk assessments around the practical aspects of taking people to outdoor venues and using outdoor spaces like gardens. Where possible, a risk assessment should be undertaken with the person with dementia so that they can decide which activities they want to participate in and how much support they might require to do that. It's also important that volunteers feel confident in delivering outdoors activities, so providing them with an induction session and some training is key. Some of the training undertaken by volunteers at the Get Outdoors projects were 2-day outdoor first aid certificates and child and adult protection training. But there are lots of courses available that you can find. It's also a good idea to check out and review activities and sites and venues regularly with the people who are participating in the sessions. Asking people how much they enjoyed the activities or how much they enjoyed the venue helps to make sure everybody feels involved and can contribute to the success of the sessions. Developing and nurturing good partnerships with organisations that can facilitate outdoor activities and venues is also a good idea. And the Get Outdoors projects that were funded by the Trust worked with lots of local venues and businesses. For example, a country house and estate in Selkirk, local bowling centres, and in the case of the NHS Dumfries and Galloway project, local farms. Projects in this way help to challenge assumptions around dementia and reduce stigma by involving the local community in delivering or participating in some of the activities. Development and planning time are a crucial part of development activities. Many of the activities were often changed between individual sessions to meet the needs and interests of participants, or maybe even just because of changes in the weather. One example given by a project was designing an activity to not include bending down to the ground because of mobility issues of those who were participating. So building in some extra pre-planning time is really important. So I've talked a little bit about flexibility and longer term planning, but you also need to make sure you've got flexibility in the day-to-day fluctuations of the weather, of numbers of participants that can vary from week to week, and any other unexpected factors that might crop up. With participants often having a wide range of different needs and physical abilities, activities need to be amended to suit participants' mobility. Some projects used a high ratio of staff to participants to ensure that everybody with different levels of ability could participate in the activities at their own speed and over their own distance, and still feel they were fully supported to do that. And it's worth bearing in mind that people with advanced dementia may need one-to-one support. Small groups of around 4 or 5 people work really well for outdoor activities, especially when they're supported by a mixture of staff, volunteers, and unpaid carers. People really want to help out and contribute in the groups, and having a role or a task to perform, such as lighting a fire, really helps to increase confidence and well-being. And of course, it goes without saying, because we live in Scotland, that you need to make sure you've got a collection of cold and wet weather, clothing, footwear, and equipment on hand for all occasions. So this slide, I've just put some pictures of one of the Get Outdoors projects. So this is participants at the Instinctively Wild project in Selkirk, enjoying a walk in the country estate of the Haining. And you can see they're out mostly in the sunshine there, so it's probably taken during the summer. But after they'd been out for a walk, they would go back into the Haining for a cup of tea, some storytelling and some songs, and in the colder months, a nice big roaring fire. So now to some practical tips for projects. Some of these can be very easily overlooked in the planning stages and can be as simple as remembering to have name badges for everybody. But it's important to have ways of keeping warm, and that could be extra clothing or blankets or a nice warm fire if you've got that. It's important to have shelter as well, and that can be outdoors or indoors, and ensuring that you're providing sturdy furniture and handrails and spacious, even areas for walking around. Some of the projects reported that they needed to give out regular information about the type of warm and waterproof clothing needed, especially for participants who are coming from care homes who maybe don't have access to the appropriate outdoor clothing. It's also a good idea to have alternative indoor activities and quizzes and competitions ready for the days when you just can't get outside because of the weather. You'll see on the next slide, I've got some lovely pictures of different activities that participants were involved in, making clay models and beautiful paperweights with flowers or bird boxes. And a lot of these activities were done with materials that they'd gathered on previous walks. So it meant that even when the weather was bad, they could bring the outside in. It's really, really important to have a social time as well, to share tea or biscuits or even a small lunch. And this is really more than a tea break. It's an opportunity for people to become friends, It's an opportunity for peer support, both for the person with dementia and for unpaid carers. And one project referred to this social space as the heart of the sessions, when participants would share anecdotes and songs and jokes and memories. Developing relationships that are respectful, trusting and nurturing between staff, volunteers, people living with dementia and unpaid carers is really important. Everyone's treated equally, everyone's contribution is welcomed and valued and given space. And participants of the Get Outdoors project reported feeling looked after, supported and comfortable. And that encourages further participation. It's important to have a range of activities ready for when the weather's not so good. And I've just put a few photographs here of some of the activities that people were involved in. You can see the lovely clay models and the paperweight made with flowers. So looking at tips now for activities for projects. Visual aids are helpful. Rather than talking about abstract ways about birds or bees, you can use photo cards to show how bird boxes or flowers might be used. It's also really useful to hold a simple mood checking and review session at the beginning and end of activities. This is a simple and effective way of understanding how people are feeling about the activity and seeing the impact. And you can do this in lots of different ways. For example, Instinctively Wild, they used a model that they developed with stones to gauge the mood and feelings of their groups. So members of the group had decorated stones and they placed these onto faces that matched different feelings. This enabled staff to notice any changes in mood or feeling between the start and the end of the sessions. As well as an evaluation tool, it was also a valuable tool for participants to share how they were feeling. And it's a good model because it can also be used by participants who are less verbal. Staff can also carry out informal capacity assessments over a few sessions so they can gain an understanding of an individual's experience of dementia. And then this can be reviewed continually at future sessions and activities amended accordingly. It's also a good idea to regularly review sessions with staff and volunteers and partners. This means you can check what's going well and what's not really working, and you can respond quite quickly to any emerging circumstances and issues. And of course, holding sessions regularly, especially for people with advanced dementia, helps to build relationships with participants and also amongst participants. And now some tips for working with partners. Using and developing local partnerships around sites and locations and ways to transport people works really well. And it has the additional benefit of supporting the local economy through using taxi services that are local, cafes and shops, but also working with local artists and musicians. And we know that developing relationships with health and social care partnerships takes time and takes a bit of work, but it's really important for referral processes. It helps to increase staff skills, and it gives staff who are working in the health and social care partnerships a different perspective on dementia. Holding feedback sessions for partners and how sessions are working for people and carers and practitioners can help to develop useful and meaningful sessions for everyone. There's lots of different ways of doing that. I've put an example here of a page from one of the logbooks that was created by one of the projects. So each participant would write their feelings about the activity and have some photographs and create a logbook over the 8 weeks. And then they were able to take that home with them and keep it, and it gave them a permanent record of the experiences that they had shared. And this was also useful then for feeding back to partners and staff. Finally, I just want to talk about some tips for meeting outdoors at the moment during COVID-19. As I mentioned earlier, meeting with small numbers of people is generally safer and more effective than large numbers. Unfortunately, current restrictions mean that even this is not possible at the moment. People do feel safer meeting outdoors, but it's always reassuring to know there's somewhere to have a shelter. So this could just simply be an open roof or a roof with open sides for ventilation and social distancing. but it does make people more comfortable if they know where local facilities like toilets and cafes are. And there's also ways of staying warm against the elements in the outdoors and safe ways to have snacks and hot drinks. I think the Get Outdoors projects really encourage people and support them to be outdoors more and enjoy the simple pleasures in life. They proved we don't need expensive day trips to take part in cultural activities in busy places. And it's nice just to be outside and socialising with friends. I think this is really important learning for these times. Just want to end with a quote from one of the projects about really the essence of the Get Outdoors projects. The ability to connect with people, to share and to build upon new and existing friendships, and most importantly, to combat isolation, were arguably the most crucial aspects of the project. I'd like to thank Darry McAleese, Graham Drever and Peter Carthy from Instinctively Wild for the photographs I've used in this presentation. And I'm going to hand back to Arlene now to take us into some discussion groups. Thank you.
Many thanks, Andrina, for illustrating so well those top tips. And as I said before, we will be sharing that as part of the learning after this event. What we've been able to do is draw that into a summary so that if people want to just see that primarily, then they can see that and use that learning. I think really just the importance of, that planning, the partnership, working, taking risks, which wouldn't ordinarily be something that we might think about, and giving people the opportunity to make those decisions, particularly around whether you go out on a windy and wet day and the equipment and the support you might need to make that an enjoyable experience. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that in these times, especially, that there is much more restrictions around, and what we're seeing today in terms of the learning is everything that people experienced pre-COVID. So it will be good to take that into consideration as things move forward and restrictions ease, hopefully in the very near future. So it's now time for us to move on to our breakout rooms, where we are going to look in a little more depth about the findings of our evaluation and think a wee bit about what I said earlier around that call to action about all of our responsibility as in terms of taking this learning and making change happen, and how we do that going forward. Very warm welcome back from the breakout sessions, and I hope it has been a valuable session to be part of, and we'll hear a bit more from our facilitators in a wee minute. And just to say apologies, what I didn't do was ask the facilitators to wave to you, but didn't actually say who they were by name, so I'll do that when I introduce them. So that was remiss of me, so sorry about that. So before we go on and hear a bit of the feedback, I just want to maybe highlight a few of the comments that have come through the chat at the moment. So from Julie at Dementia Friendly Press Week, she was saying it's really been great to see people in the photos and the films so close together, sitting together, mixing together, obviously pre-coronavirus, and that unfortunately for their activities, their outdoor walks, they've had to cease just now. So as Andrina said, a lot of activities have had to adapt, and hopefully we'll be able to return to some kind of outdoor activity offer at some point in the near future. But yeah, it is the reality for a lot of people just now, unfortunately. And also good to see the exchange and the connections between people on the webinar today. So lovely commentary from Froglife about an inquiry from one of those participants around work going on in London around outdoors and the BME communities. So great to hear Louise from Froglife signposting onto a new project in London. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes and develops. And obviously we have done our own funded work with minority ethnic communities up here in Scotland, not outdoor specific obviously, but if there's any learning that would be helpful in that regard, then you can find that on our website too. So great to see that exchange of learning happening throughout the morning of the webinar. So I've said enough now. I'm going to hand over to our facilitators. So firstly, I think Fiona will start with you.
Thank you. So we had a fabulous discussion around the questions, and starting with how to get organisations really proactively working together to support people with dementia we were talking about how organisations together can just share this message, do more of what we are doing today, helping people to see what's possible and how it's possible. And it was really picked up that the videos of Evanton Woods and the shed were really powerful in terms of enabling people to see somebody holding a power tool where that might not be the first thought that came to a project's mind initially. And also telling people over and over again. So we had the benefit of Alison, who lives near to Evanton Woods, talking about how the local paper constantly having pictures and activity from that wood featured, and that just gets the community interested and wondering what's happening and breaking down that stigma around it being something different for people with dementia. We talked around the sustainability of enabling people to keep getting outdoors. So any initial perhaps reticence from somebody to join in with group activities can really be helped when they're part of a group and they can get confidence from other people doing the activity alongside them. In some of the projects, we heard that an initial dementia-specific project can then be translated into something that just becomes inclusive. For example, the bowling club, where people with dementia are included as a normal part of that bowling club now, now that the project's over. And in terms of that, how to move away from a risk-averse culture, the key message was just get on with it. Show people that evidence of taking risks, it can work out fine. People take the adequate risk assessment. Some people love taking risks, acknowledge that, and perhaps thinking about a risk-benefit analysis as well as a simple risk assessment for an activity. And we had a lovely example from Dementia Adventure, who took a group of people with dementia zip wiring, which was incredibly successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. That's really good to hear, actually, and I just like that. You know, just get on with it. I think absolutely that's a really good and really strong message, and the kind of turn on words around risk assessment and making it more positive around risk benefits. So brilliant. Thank you. Sandrina, can we move on to you and some feedback from your group? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. We had a fantastic discussion as well. We had some lovely feedback from Jerry, who attends an outdoors project in Fife. And he just said for someone with dementia, it's great because you get independence, you get given a task and you just get on with it. And you can make a decision about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And just having that independence is great. He suggested that we should be using community gardens and spaces that we've got already in communities, and just making sure that people with dementia know that those spaces are available for them to use. We talked a lot about funding as well, and how funders need to be flexible. And we've seen how funders can be flexible during this pandemic, but we need to make sure that happens all of the time beyond the pandemic. Just having flexibility to buy the right equipment and to put on transport as well for people to get to activities, because that's a big issue as well, actually getting to places. Building in things like money for waterproofs, and we had a great example of a donation that was made to a project of heated belts that people can wear while they're out walking, and they're rechargeable. So that's something to look into. Working with other organisations, we talked about sort of like a bartering system. So there was a project who had resources, staff and activities, but didn't have a space, and worked with a day centre that had a space but didn't have the staff or the activities. So that's a really good example of organisations working together to be able to develop something. And we also talked a lot, as Fiona said, about just showing what is achievable and what's possible, showing the great work that's going on at the moment. We just need to promote that as widely as possible and as much as possible. In terms of some of the challenges, Lee from the Ecology Centre said that it's really important to set physical expectations at the start of delivering outdoor activities so that people know exactly the level of activity and what they're going to be participating in, so everyone can enjoy the activity together. And always having an additional activity as well, as we mentioned in the presentation. Don't persevere if the weather's bad. Don't say we're an outdoors activity, we have to get outdoors. If the weather's really bad, don't persevere and have something up your sleeve for doing indoors. In terms of overcoming the risk-averse culture, leading by example, as I said, publicising projects that are letting people light fires and use power tools, and and it's about making sure that people participating have got information about the risks and that they know that they can make a decision then themselves about whether they want to take that risk. We also talked a bit about care homes. It can be challenging working with care homes in terms of staff time and things like that. It's about building relationships with care homes, and also about talking to staff about maybe their apprehensions about getting outside. They might not be outdoors people, they might not be comfortable with it, they might have a lot of questions. So just making sure that everybody's in an environment where they can ask questions, they know what they're letting themselves in for beforehand, so that they're comfortable participating when it comes to it. I think I've covered everything. I hope so. I'm sure someone will let me know if I haven't. That's everything from me. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Andrina. And just Julie from Dementia Friendly Presswick's just saying the heated belts are from a Scottish company. Feel the warmth. So there you are. There's a link and a contact that people can maybe hook onto. I also liked the feedback from Jerry around, that using the community space that's already there and making sure that people are connected. So there'll be many projects and activities or unused space out there that people could be looking at and considering. So thanks for that, Jerry. And yeah, absolutely, the pooling of resources, because funding is sometimes the answer, but it's also looking at what's already out there and how people can work in partnership to make that impact and to make it a reality for people in their local communities. So thanks very much, Andrina. That's great feedback. So next we're going to move on to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, if you can share some highlights from your session.
Thanks, Arlene. And thank you to my group. We had a really good discussion. Could have done with twice the time, and I'm sure the rest of the groups have been the same. In relation to the first question, one of the issues that came up was the concept of green or social prescribing by GPs and other health professionals. And this was suggested as a really good pathway, a route for referrals, if you like, for people to come and join in outdoor activities. So the importance of building up those relationships, awareness raising, giving information so that they're aware of you and you're aware of others, if you like. But linked to that was a key point about the fact that these outdoor activities work really. One of the key strengths, and we've seen that through the evaluation, is the informality of how things are delivered, the general approach, and that needs to be reflected in how things are communicated, for example, to those who could refer people to outdoor activities, and avoiding, it is not a service, trying to avoid that kind of language. And secondly, the other side of that coin is also thinking about equalities and being mindful that how do you make sure in terms of how you raise awareness, communicate what the offer is in terms of outdoor activities, that folk with dementia and care, oh, I'm in there, this is for me. So thinking about the language. And secondly, where outdoor activities are kind of intergenerational, so there's folk with different ages, different backgrounds, etc. involved. So it's broad and it's open to all. That again could perhaps break down barriers, encourage folk to take part, and also help counter stigma in relation to dementia. A key catalyst could be, and we're given the example of the now permanent post in Fife, the dementia friendly coordinator, and now having a central resource like that someone who can identify what is happening in the area, who's doing what, linking organisations and people up, getting information out, so that people know what's available and then they can take up opportunities. A really, really useful resource for everyone concerned. Thirdly, in relation to trying to address the idea of countering the risk adverse culture, one point that was raised was about the importance and the advantages of locating outdoor activities in the voluntary sector, the third sector, recognising that very often the third sector has that bit more flexibility, a bit more fleet of foot in terms of how they do things, how quickly they can do things and so on. And importantly, demonstrating how well things really do work. So demystifying how you do outdoor activities and counter risk, allaying fears, and therefore building up confidence, both in terms of those who might take part and join in terms of making outdoor activities happen, but also in terms of encouraging people with dementia and carers to actually come along and take part. We had someone from down south, from London, who works with minority ethnic communities, and he was reflecting on one of the biggest challenges that he faces is securing finance, human resource, to actually do activities, and being able to inform funders, if you like, that this is something that's worth funding. So, invitation to any of you who's doing it, any of you listening and taking part who are already delivering outdoor activities. There's an invitation there for you to get in touch with Chino, who has put his details in the chat. He issued an invitation to others involved in the webinar to get in touch with him, to take part in event meetings that he would like to organise, to share your learning, your experience. And we already had Louise from outside the box in our group who said, yes, absolutely interested in that. So please get in touch with Chino. Another point made from another participant in our group, again relating to minority ethnic communities, I think, was the point I think made by Louise in the presentation was, I think, or it was a quotation on the screen about wanting to see my future. And again, linking that thing, this is for me. So really important for people in different communities to say, this is something for me that I can take part in, back to communications and language and awareness raising. Practical challenges and how we overcome them. Clearly the weather, the cold and the rain, that came up, of course. Again, I think this links to some of what people have already said, feeding back, and thinking about where, the sites where you're running outdoor activities and what's around in the nearby environment, the other organisations close by that you might be able to negotiate with and get involved. So there might be a local care home near to where you're running your activities, and perhaps you could negotiate using some space there if the weather turns bad.
Hi, Elizabeth. Just sorry to interrupt, just that I'm conscious of time, so if you could maybe just sum
absolutely
up.
One more point. Thank you. Was about transport and the challenges around that. Solution could be volunteer drivers paid for their petrol, but of course there's a whole issue of COVID just now and that being impossible. But people reflect on the fact that we can't do it just now, but let's plan for the future now. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Just that we've got a few more to get through, but thanks. Sounds like a really good discussion and good to see those connections being made. And I like the idea of that, the importance of language to draw people in and to make them feel part of something. And obviously that the language around kind of risk averse and demystifying that as well to draw people in. So brilliant. Thank you very much. Charlie, do you want to give us a bit of feedback on your session?
We had a great discussion as well. Like Elizabeth, we could have talked for a lot longer. There was special mention for the two videos where I just wanted to say that, people really appreciated those short films and showing the kind of practical side of the activities. So we talked about, I suppose, sorry, this is probably not completely in order, but we talked about there was an idea of like Elizabeth was saying, like GP surgeries being the kind of beacon of kind of sharing knowledge, referring people on to outdoor activities and things like that. Also to do with dementia linked workers, also having that role as well. There was an idea of a real emphasis on the need and importance of and support for volunteers, and having to have volunteers trained to deliver activities. There was also mention of community activists and community councillors and community development trusts. Sort of to name check, there was we talked about Dementia Friendly Dunblane and how they have that sort of organisational aspect in place where volunteers are trained and supported. We talked about having a plan if, as Andrea was saying, if the weather was too poor, having kind of bringing the outdoors indoors, having activities that could be accessible for people at home or in care homes and things like that. One of the big things that we talked about, and I think we've talked about this before, but the challenges is about having public toilets and outdoor toilets that have to be kept open, and there was a real call for local authorities to make sure that these are open for people to use. We talked about how, especially I suppose now with the situation we're in, that over the next kind of 3 to 5 years, there'll be a real push for accessibility to outdoor spaces, and local authorities and local partnerships really have to kind of get on board with this aspect, because it's obviously important and people need to get outdoors, and it'll be even more important hopefully when things return to some sort of normality. And I think there was the idea that we do have a lot of information, we do have a lot of knowledge already. It's just having that knowledge pushed out there, that there was sort of the idea that in Scotland there is the notion that we kind of have that in place already, and it's just an idea of kind of trying to push that, and that will hopefully sort of break down barriers, but also get people more motivated to go outdoors. So, but as I said, we could have talked for a lot longer, but that's us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charlie, and it's good for you to mention volunteers, because they're an intrinsic part of the delivery of those outdoor activities for people, and they featured a lot in the films that we saw, so good to make reference to that and the importance, the role that they play. So thanks, Charlie. And last but by no means least, Louise, would you be able to give us a wee bit of feedback from your session?
I will do. Thanks, Arlene. I'm conscious of time as well, so I'll try and make it kind of short and sweet. We also had a really, really good discussion, and thank you to all the group for their input. We had similar comments and suggestions, I think, as the other group. So I think the connecting up with other organisations, that is so important, and it's been key to delivery in lots of areas that we talked about, with a good geographical spread. But there was that sense that if you team up with another group to take away some of the risks, what one organisation doesn't know, the other one will, or hopefully does, and that just helps build a stronger understanding of the issues that you're facing. So teaming up with others to take away some of that fear, I think, came across quite key. So we had a good example in Dementia Friendly Prestwick, so the Pass for All, with the sort of partner organisation to develop walks along the seafront in Prestwick, supporting dementia friendly walks. Pass for All were already quite experienced, so they audited the walk in advance, they checked out the public toilets, any hazards, and they provided free training to the volunteer walk leaders. So they all were trained up and they became accredited. So other funders obviously like to see that you've done the risk assessment, so that was kind of all covered off, and you were covered by the insurance that Pass for All provided, so that was great. And there was an example that Pass for All didn't want dogs on the walks, but the volunteers all had dogs. So it was basically risk assessed, and the dogs were made an honorary volunteer to attend the walks on the pass. We also had a good example of partnership working in Kerry Connections up in Kerrymuir of the community garden. So they invite other groups in to do intergenerational work. And I think it's just that sense of being open to what other groups are doing in the area. If they're active, just open your arms to everybody out there. Make sure that you're linking up. There was somebody on our group from the University of Hertfordshire, so they're developing best practice guidelines for dementia-friendly communities and how they work with other organisations. So I think that will be really interesting to see, and I'm sure that person would be able to kind of share the information, across everybody that's attending. That would be helpful when it's available. And then going on to the sort of risk-averse part, the strong message was to take the risks. Because if you don't, you'll never know what happens. And again, an example of a pop-up cinema in Prestwick, I think it was. So people were really worried about the practicalities. So toilets, having nurses available, and the outcome was that it's really never been that necessary, and it's been a far more relaxed environment because of that. I think who's involved in your project is key. So it depends on those that are leading. It depends on the volunteers, but if they're well trained and they're confident and they're experienced, then it shouldn't matter. And don't let fear put you off, and reach out for support when it's needed. I think the comment from Julie at Dementia Friendly Prestwick was the safety net will form around you, which was lovely. But I think there was a general sense that large third sector organisations are risk averse, and that we all need to challenge this and publicise how successful these projects have been to make changes in practice and learn and share at events like this, producing reports, and just have a collective voice to shout about the changes that are needed, and just to show how we're overcoming all these challenges. So I think it was just to show that we've overcome the challenge of Zoom and lockdown, and we can overcome the challenge of getting it outdoors. So that was us. It was a great discussion. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Louise. And what a really good way to end that is that, that anything is possible, and that we need to move forward and look at what the potential of people rather than looking at, what challenges them. So that kind of positive outlook. And I like the fact of that kind of sharing skills and expertise. It's not just about, it being down to one person or one organisation to do everything. There is the opportunity to have a skill mix, pool resources, all these kind of things that we've talked about before. So thanks very much, Louise. I just want to quickly, just one or two comments coming through from people. So I'm moving much more to the kind of top, from Donald Laurie from, is it King Lucy, to say, they are keen to link with anyone who'd like to contact them regarding their outdoors project. So there's a call to action there from Donald at the Church of Scotland, and also from Graham at Kerry Connections as well. He's sharing information about, I'm having a wee look here, Vivian the Pledge from the Amazing Dementia Adventure gave an excellent talk last month about adapting outdoor projects during COVID. There's a blog post about it, so Graham has put a link to that. So yeah, the chat is now flowing with lots of information and lots of links. So please, if you can, take that information down, and we can possibly share some of that in the post-event learning as well. So many thanks to our facilitators for doing that today. We're now coming to the end of today's webinar. I want to say a massive thank you to you all for joining us today, and to say and to hope, I suppose, that it's been all that you intended it to be, and you've really taken a lot from today's webinar. It's been a real pleasure to chair this, particularly with the mix of film and animation and live presentations. It really adds a really good flow to the programme. So I hope you found it helpful in terms of your learning today. And again, like I said at the start, this is a call to action for us all, taking elements of the learning, whether it's the report, the summaries, the hints and tips, the magic moments, or the kind of recordings themselves, and using that in terms of how you might make change happen within your own area or within your own organisations. And we'll certainly be doing that at the Life Changes Trust. Thanks to our speakers today, Louise Wilson from Outside the Box, and also Andrina Coburn from the Trust. And an additional mention to Christina Ryder from Outside the Box, who was responsible for putting that excellent animation together. So many thanks to Christine as well. And also just thanks to our facilitators and those from Outside the Box that joined them in the breakout sessions. And also to all of our Get Outdoors projects for making the time to work alongside the evaluation team and and for, you know, providing activities from the Get Outdoors funding that are really making and continue to make a significant difference to the lives of people with dementia and unpaid carers, and also for their contribution to planning this event today. Many thanks to all of them. We will email everyone with a link to the recording in the next few days as part of a post-event email. And if there is anything that you want to pick up on from us, then please get in touch with us directly and we'll do what we can to pass on any additional information. I know Deborah's been putting some stuff in the chat as well for MD with a direct question. We will include the report, the summaries that I've mentioned, the magic moments, and also the top tips that Andrina presented on as well. So absolutely loads of stuff and learning to take away with from today. And just again, a big thanks to you all for staying with us. It's really good to see so many people engaged in this topic, and we look forward to welcoming you to our next thematic event coming up in the next few months. So goodbye everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.